There's about 16,000 acres here at Dubbo and 82,000 acres north of Burke, far west from South Wales. We wanted to try and stop using chemicals as much on our country here at Dubbo, and to use goats as a bit of a tool to control weeds and those sorts of things. They eat a bit different species of plants and that sort of thing to sheep. So the aim was really at the start was just to something that we could adopt to our business without changing any infrastructure. It's the same fencing we use for our sheep, same yards, all that sort of stuff. But diversify our business a little bit too. Handle tough times. It could be tough times. It could be markets up and down, and it's just another. We don't have all our eggs in one basket sort of thing. With our merino sheep breeding enterprise, we use an SRS classing system, which was developed by Dr. Jim Watts, who was a scientist, and a lot of it's about the skin structure of an animal and also the conformation of an animal, and using genetic breeding values for other traits like the carcass traits and putting it all together in one package. We were looking through a brochure that had just been done up by the SRS group of merino studs, and in that brochure was also the goat breeders and the alpaca breeders using the same classing methods. And at the time they were talking about their high mohair prices, and wool was, it was okay, it was still fairly high. And the mohair was double to triple what the wool prices were. In 2015 we brought the feral goats from our Burke property, about 800 of those back here, and we sourced them Angora genetics from West Wyalong. They'd been using the SRS classing methods, and a lot of them are poles, and we crossed those over the ferals, over them. So our first cross was that. We had the feral traits plus some of the mohair traits. And as we've bred on each year now, we've got third cross animals that we're selling the mohair as into our top quality lines of mohair. And they were doing a lot of work in the last 10 or 15 years with the goats. Breeding them polled was a big one for us, for not just animal welfare of the animals, damaging each other with their horns, but user-friendly, and that they're not hurting us in the yards and that sort of thing. A bit easier to shear, they're not trying to stab you with their horns. 2016 we had a massive season here. We actually got to the stage where we couldn't spray crops with chemicals because it was just too wet to get on the ground. And aeroplanes were used a lot for spraying, which we used some of those techniques, but also used some of the goats to, and they're quite interesting animal. The fresh green crop was too good for them, so they'd go around the fence lines and the trees and through the rows of the crop and pick off any of the weeds that were, and it actually did as good a job as the sprays. It was incredible how they'd clean the weeds out of the crop. After 2016, we've had 3 years of probably the worst years of drought in history. The goats have still produced kids and mohair, and we've had to feed them, but it's just a maintenance ration. The goats seem to still do quite well in the dry time, eating briar bushes and those sorts of things that not many of the other animals would eat. But the animals still thrive through that dry weather. There's been a few challenges with the goats, but I think it's something that can be adapted to any farming business in Australia, whether it's cropping or sheep and cattle or whatever it is.